Iconic, The Economy of Certainty, An Introduction to the Typology of Islamic Legal Theory, Aron Zysow, Harvard University, 1984, Cambridge, Massachusetts. The Unit Tradition in Zahirism and Hanbalism. Among the legal schools that are associated with the Ahl al-Hadith, the Zahiris and Hanbalis are of particular historical importance. The study of the Zahiri school is, of course, greatly handicapped by lack of resources. This was true when Goldziher wrote his classical study in 1884 and remains true to this day, despite the publication of major works of Ibn Hazm. The danger, indeed, is great that Zahirism will be identified with its greatest representative, and that other aspects of the movement will be overlooked. In what follows, we shall trace, on the basis of very scanty reports, a significant disagreement within early Zahirism as to the understanding of the unit tradition, and then how Ibn Hazm, possibly with this disagreement in mind, elaborated an argument which raised the unit tradition to its greatest eminence. Among those who are commonly cited as having held the unit tradition, affording certain knowledge, is Dawood ibn Ali ibn Khalaf, the founder of the Zahiri school. Dawood is said to have considered this knowledge inferential, istidlali, and his reason is supposed to have been the Quran forbids us to follow what is presumptive in 1736, quote, and follow not that which you hast no knowledge, and condemns those who follow it in 53:28. They follow naught but conjecture, dhan, and conjecture avails nothing against the truth. Yet we know that there is a consensus to accept the unit tradition. We may then properly infer that the unit tradition is a source of knowledge. This is, of course, the same sort of argument we encountered in Jassas's defense of the Mashhur tradition as a source of certainty. Dawood's reasoning contrasts neatly with that of those Zahiris who rejected the unit tradition on the basis of the same Quranic verses. Action must depend upon knowledge, but since the unit tradition is not a source of knowledge, it cannot serve as the basis for action. This view is most commonly attributed to al-Qassani. It is also linked now and then to Abu Bakr ibn Dawood and to al-Nahrawani. Abu Bakr ibn Dawood is, of course, the son of Dawood al-Zahiri. Ibn Dawood, who dies 297-909, was a scholar of wide learning and the chief exponent of his father's system. Al-Qassani is Abu Bakr Muhammad ibn Ishaq, a follower, but a very critical one of Dawood. He was the object of a refutation of Abu al-Hasan Abdullah ibn al-Mughallis, who dies in 324-935, the leading Zahiri of his day. Al-Nahrawani is another Zahiri. Abu Sa'id ibn Hasan ibn Ubaid, a work of his against analogy, is mentioned in the Fihrist of Ibn Nadim. Thus, at the beginning of the history of Zahirism, we find a rejection of the Khabr al-Wahid as a source of law, and this despite the teaching of Dawood. In holding this view, Ibn Dawood would be set squarely against his greatest rival, the Shafi'i Ibn Surayj, who dies in 306-918, who argued that the acceptance of the Khabr al-Wahid was rationally obligatory. This and other positions which were regarded as Mu'tazilite were held by a significant body of Shafi'is, among them Al-Qaffal al-Shashi, who dies in 365-976. This embarrassing fact was explained by the later Ash'ari theologians al-Baqillani and Abu Ishaq al-Isfaraini as due solely to the incompetence of these jurists in questions of theology. They picked up what they read in the Mu'tazili treatises. In fact, in the case of Ibn Surayj at least, these positions would have been the ones which he would have been able to use against his Zahiri opponents. Ibn Surayj was also the author of a reply to Al-Qassani. The contents of this work are completely unknown, but it is reported that Al-Qassani came to embrace Shafi'ism and to defend the use of analogy. Unfortunately, Ibn Hazm makes no inference or reference to this group that we can identify. For him, those who rejected the unit traditions are the Mu'tazila theologians who in the 8th century were the first to deviate from the consensus on this matter. He may well consider these Zahiris as tainted with the Mu'tazila heresy. Although the Mu'tazila who rejected the unit tradition was supposed to have done so on the basis of reason, as opposed to the Zahiris whose rejection was based upon scripture, the distinction we have maintained. The arguments are combined in some sources. Moreover, Al-Ghazali contrasts the majority position which accepts the Khabar Wahid with that of most of the Qadariyya and their Zahiri followers, such as Al-Qassani, who held that an act in accordance with Khabar al-Wahid is forbidden by revelation. The important question, and one which we are now in a position to answer, is how did this change in legal theory affect the legal practice of the Zahiri school? The Zahiris, as deniers of analogy, needed all the material sources they could find. To have done away with all the norms contained in the corpus of new traditions would have meant a radical reduction of the scope of the system constructed by Dawood. What has been regulated under that system would thus revert to the original status of legal indifference. This position was, in fact, taken by some who rejected the Khabar al-Wahid. Alternatively, they could have, and most probably did, claim that many traditions considered unit in fact were mutawatir, for, as Ibn Hazm notes, anyone can claim for any tradition what he wishes that it is mutawatir. Indeed, it is the collectors of isnads, ashab al-isnad, who can put forth the most valid claim to this effect, since they have so many reporters and varied isnads to vouch for this claim. Stay tuned.